KSRO. Well, they've got some air-conditioned cells at Gitmo, libraries stuffed with over 20,000 books, exercise classes, and gourmet food, plus health care that rivals American plans. So why would some of the most dangerous terrorists in the world want to swap with American supermax prisons? The answer is they don't. But President Obama does want to shut down Guantanamo Bay over the objections of the American people and Congress. Joining us on the live line this morning is Cliff May from the Federation for the Defense of Democracies. Good morning, Cliff.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
7 years ago, I was at Gitmo, and then we went back to Congress, and we lobbied Congress in order to keep Guantanamo Bay open. And now it looks like after 7 years, the president has decided that he is going to go around the will of the American people and shut it down.
Well, he's wanted to do that, of course, from the beginning. I've been there as well. I'm not clear how he's going to do this when, A, Congress is against it on a bipartisan basis. The American people, as you say, are against it on a bipartisan basis. And, in fact, under the law, he cannot shut it down. He certainly cannot bring any of the prisoners who are, or let me call them detainees, which is what they are, and we should make that distinction clear way at this moment. He cannot, under a law that he signed and that Congress passed, again on a bipartisan basis, bring any of those detainees here to the United States.
You know, he claims that his military advisors in the Pentagon are urging him to close the facility, saying that it would actually make our country more safer. What would you say to that?
I would say that's a nice spin, but there is not a shred of proof that that is true, and there's a lot of evidence that would suggest that it's not the case. Look, the idea that people at ISIS or Al-Qaeda would say, oh, did you read this? Guantanamo's being closed, and all those prisoners are going to Supermax in Colorado. You know what? It's time to go easy on the Americans, after all. Look, 9/11 occurred before Guantanamo was open. Guantanamo is where we put those we are capturing in a war declared by people who proclaim themselves to be jihadis. And in a war, there are two things you do. One is you kill people. President Obama has done that. He uses drones for that. The other thing you normally do in a war, though he has not been willing to do, is you capture the enemy when you don't kill them. Many would say that's a better thing to do than killing the enemy. Now, when you capture the enemy, you have to have a place to put them. And that's what Guantanamo is, a place to detain these prisoners of war, except they're not honorable prisoners of war. They're unlawful prisoners of war because they engage in terrorism. Nonetheless, they've been treated, as you suggested, very well down there. Very good food. They've been treated more than humane, not the way our any Americans or others who are captured by the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda are treated, or not the way those who are taken hostage by Iran are treated. But they are detained. They are kept off the battlefield. Now, hundreds of detainees have been let go, not just by President Obama, but before that by President Bush. About a third of them, at least, have gone back to the battlefield, gone back to killing Americans. That's why it's a bad idea. The idea that we will get a public relations boost by closing Guantanamo and it will help us in the war on terrorism, and the idea that overweighs the possibility, in fact, the likelihood that we acknowledge that some of these people will go back, about a third of them at least, and begin killing people, it just doesn't hold any logical sense.
This is the whole thing that's so puzzling to me, as I try to put myself in President Obama's position, thinking, what is the best thing to do for the American people? And I still can't come up with a conclusion that closing down Guantanamo Bay is going to be any more beneficial to us than it would be, if we brought these prisoners to the United States, which, of course, would make us targets now within the continental U.S.
Yes, well, that's absolutely. Look, I don't think this is I don't think he sees this, honestly, as a way of improving the situation for the United States. I think he thinks, I promised to do it. I only have a year left. I have a legacy. This is important for me to do. I'm going to see if I can't do it. And I'll try to do it with Congress. If I can't, I'll try to find a way to go around Congress, even though Congress is a co-equal branch of government. If you bring one of the reasons this was established offshore was that once you bring these detainees, these unlawful combatants who are being detained until the end of hostilities, which is what is permitted under international law, then you have a very good chance that some judge will say, well, they are now U.S. persons. They now have the right to the same right that any American citizen has to constitutional protections. And what's more, we must treat them as if they had committed normal crimes, which means they deserve to have a lawyer, they deserve to have a trial, and if we don't have enough evidence, then they can't be convicted, and that means they have to be convicted beyond a reasonable doubt. And if that hasn't happened, we have to release them, and maybe release them in the U.S. Now, normally, combatants, you can try for war crimes, but you don't have to. That's not necessary. That wasn't the case for tens of thousands of prisoners of war that we had in World War II. The reason is, to meet the standards of criminal justice, you have to develop evidence and have chains of evidence. We cannot have our soldiers on the battlefield playing cop.
Well, we cannot.
Taking little bags of evidence and taking it back.
No, we don't have time for that. Cliff, thank you. We're out of time ourselves, but thank you so much for joining us this morning. We always appreciate talking with you.
My pleasure.
Cliff May, former New York Times reporter and the executive chairman of the Federation for Defense of Democracies, or FDD.